That day, Barb came to the lake to mourn her late husband, but suddenly, gunshots rang out nearby. They were followed by a burst of muffled shouting. Barb's heart tightened and she hurried over to check. A second gunshot suddenly echoed. She dropped beside her car, only to see a girl with her hands tied behind her back being chased by a man. The girl fell to the ground, and the man's furious yelling became clear. Realizing something was terribly wrong, Barb hurriedly took out her phone to call the police. But in this remote lakeside area, there was no signal at all. All of a sudden, she remembered something. An hour earlier, she had seen this man before. 3 days ago, she had braved a blizzard and traveled to Minnesota. But she got lost in the storm and, by accident, ended up at Wayne's cabin. When she stepped forward to ask for directions, she caught sight of bloodstains on the ground out of the corner of her eye. Wayne noticed Barb at that moment and instantly panicked. Fortunately, he knew that Hilda Lake was not far behind the cabin. As for the blood on the ground, he lied and said he had hit a deer. Barb was focused only on keeping her promise to meet her late husband by the lake. Without thinking too much, she turned and walked toward the water. Reaching the center of the lake, she set down her belongings. Tears immediately welled up in her eyes. With trembling hands, she opened a rusty old metal box. Inside were keepsakes she and her husband had once used here, each one soaked in memories. At that moment, a gunshot rang out. The bloodstains outside the cabin instantly flashed through her mind. Barb suddenly realized the danger and quickly packed up, planning to drive back to the cabin to investigate. But before she got far, her car became stuck in the snow. With no other choice, she continued on foot. As she approached the cabin, she saw Wayne leaving in a hurry. Barb seized the chance and rushed toward the cabin. While she was checking the area, a scream suddenly came from the basement. She tore open the window screen and finally saw the imprisoned girl, Leah. Just then, the sound of car engines approached. Barb quickly hid behind the cabin. 2 cars pulled up, and Wayne's wife, Diane, stepped out. Barb clearly saw Diane go inside and immediately put some medication into her mouth, as if easing a condition. Seeing that the couple had no time to check the basement, Barb turned back again. She wrote on the window, "I won't leave you," hoping to give Leah some strength. Then Barb returned to her car. She pulled off the tarp, revealing a portable, collapsible shelter inside. At the same time, Diane suddenly felt sharp pain in her abdomen as she stepped outside. She bent over instinctively and noticed a red glove lying near the door. She rushed to the basement window, relieved to see that Leah was still there. Then she spotted a set of footprints. Immediately sensing something was wrong, she ran back inside to confront Wayne. Wayne finally confessed that an elderly person had gotten lost and come by earlier. Diane exploded in anger and grabbed a gun, rushing outside. Wayne kept insisting the person had only passed through. Soon, the couple discovered the temporary shelter by the lake. They assumed Barb was inside. With medication clenched in her teeth and a gun in her hand, Diane advanced step by step. But this was exactly Barb's plan. She was not inside at all. After seeing Wayne fall into the trap, Barb immediately returned to the cabin. She searched for the basement entrance, only to find it locked. Without a key, she couldn't open it. Once she steadied herself, she encouraged Leah that they had to get her out now. But Leah's hands were tightly bound with chains, and no one knew where the key was. Since the chains couldn't be opened anytime soon, Barb decided to make things harder for the couple instead. An idea formed in her mind. She used icy water to extinguish all the fires in the cabin. Then she soaked the clothes and blankets as well. She wanted Wayne, who had just climbed out of freezing water, to have nothing dry to change into. But as she stepped outside, she ran straight into the returning kidnappers. Although she was shot in the arm, she was still able to move. Taking advantage of the moment they reloaded, Barb turned and ran into the forest. When the couple returned to the cabin, they found it completely flooded. They were furious. Luckily, Leah was still there and hadn't escaped, but Wayne was shivering uncontrollably from the cold. They couldn't even find a single match. As Wayne was close to hypothermia, the two had no choice but to take shelter in their car and rely on the heater. Meanwhile, back at the lake, Barb noticed while treating her wound that her engagement ring was gone. It was the most precious thing her husband had ever given her. She looked toward the cabin by the lake, guessing she might have dropped it while setting the trap. But after searching for a long time, she still couldn't find it. Tears slid down her face once again. Then she looked down and spotted Wayne's dropped handgun. There was only one bullet left, but it was still something. Soon, Barb noticed Wayne dragging his luggage. It seemed like he planned to set up camp there. With no time to waste, Barb hurried back to the cabin. But Diane and Leah were both gone. With no other choice, Barb had to tend to her own wound first. Otherwise she would pass out from blood loss. She cut away the fabric stuck to the wound. Then she poured alcohol directly onto it. Next, she took out a fishing hook from the metal box, one she and her husband had used on their first fishing trip. After disinfecting it, she clenched her teeth and stitched the wound through the pain. Once everything was finally done, she rushed out of the cabin. Now she had to find help. She smashed into the kidnapper's vehicle, because it had a radio inside. Barb scanned through multiple channels until she finally got a response. Calmly, she explained what had happened and gave her location. The other side said help was on the way. But at that moment, Wayne appeared behind her. Wayne was weak all over from hypothermia, and Barb was able to subdue him with ease. Terrified, Wayne claimed that everything he had done was forced on him by Diane. He insisted that he was actually a good person. It turned out that Diane was suffering from cancer, and the reason they had taken the girl was for an organ transplant. Wayne said that all he wanted now was to go to the hospital for treatment and no longer be involved in any of this. Barb did not believe him. As he spoke, Wayne pulled out Barb's missing diamond ring. He said it must be incredibly important to her. Barb was overwhelmed with emotion. After calming herself down, she told Wayne that if he truly regretted his actions, he should drive to the nearest town to report everything, and then go to the hospital to have his injuries treated. Before leaving, Wayne shakily handed Barb his last few bullets. Perhaps he really had been forced into it. But what Barb never expected was that Wayne had not driven very far before he ran into the returning Diane. Wayne clearly seemed terrified of her. As soon as Diane stepped out of the car with a gun in hand, no. He immediately told her everything, saying he was going to a nearby town to get medical help. When Diane realized Wayne was trying to back out, she exploded in rage, shouting that he was abandoning her at the most critical moment. But Wayne knew his body could no longer hold on. He told Diane it was not too late to turn back, and that she should stop now. At that moment, Diane lowered her head, and blood suddenly began to drip from her nose. She lost control and raised the gun straight at Wayne. Meanwhile, Barb returned to the lakeside and pushed her car directly into the lake. She was heartbroken, because this car had accompanied her and her husband for decades. But now she had no choice but to set it on fire. She planned to use the explosion to guide rescuers to her location. After that, she ran toward the main road. Sure enough, not long after, the sound of approaching engines echoed in the distance. Barb hurried forward to ask for help, and explained the situation to the two men who got out of the vehicle. Even after Barb told them she was the one who had sent out the distress call, the two men remained cautious. They asked Barb to hand over her gun, and promised they would protect her and handle everything safely. With no other option, Barb agreed. Soon, they arrived near the cabin. To her shock, Diane had really come back, and the car was still running. The men said they planned to talk to her calmly. Barb panicked and urgently warned them that Diane was extremely dangerous. But they ignored Barb's warning and walked straight toward the cabin. When their calls went unanswered, they decided to open the car door to check. They saw the driver's window covered in blood, yet still did not realize the danger. Barb grew desperate. She quickly grabbed her tools and forced open the armrest compartment, retrieving her gun. As one of the men fell injured to the ground, Barb immediately stood up and rushed toward the weapon. But Diane had already gotten up. Barb quickly hid behind the car. When she looked up, she saw Wayne's body, and it was clear Diane had completely lost control. When Barb regained consciousness, she found herself tied up in the basement along with Leah. Through talking with Leah, Barb realized the girl had become utterly hopeless, with no belief that she would ever escape. So Barb once again encouraged her with words of strength, telling her never to give up, no matter the situation. Soon after, Diane forced the two of them out onto the Francine Lake. Barb was made to carry supplies for her. At the center of the ice lake stood a tent which Wayne had built earlier. Once inside, Barb realized it was a makeshift operating room. Under Diane's orders, Barb opened the supplies she had been carrying. Inside was an organ storage container. Diane was planning to remove Leah's liver right there. Barb immediately tried to stop her, promising she would find a way to raise money to help. She even offered her own liver in Leah's place, but Diane ignored her completely. She ordered Barb to place Leah on the operating table and secure her with tape. Barb deliberately wrapped the tape loosely, making it look secure on the surface. As long as Leah struggled hard enough, she could break free. Just after Barb finished tying her, Leah showed a look of sheer terror. Diane then brought over a surgical blade and cut open Leah's clothing. Blood continued to run from Diane's nose, but she did not care anymore. She calmly marked Leah's body, then disinfected the area, preparing to begin the procedure. At that moment, Barb, who had fallen to the ground, suddenly stood back up. During your violent struggle, the hanging kerosene lamp was knocked down, instantly setting the tent on fire. The two fought their way outside the tent. As they struggled for the gun, they moved closer and closer to the hole in the ice. Meanwhile, the flames spread through the tent and Leah was fighting desperately to free herself. Barb was older and simply could not overpower Diane. The box Barb was carrying was knocked to the ground. It was this box that had protected her by blocking a bullet. Inside were her husband's ashes. Before his death, her husband had made a final request, asking Barb to scatter his ashes into Lake Hilda, where they had gone on their first date. He wanted to remain forever in that moment they shared. These things meant nothing to Diane, who tossed them aside with contempt. She grabbed Barb and dragged her toward the hole in the ice. At that critical moment, Leah finally broke free inside the tent. She rushed out immediately. Leah's sudden appearance startled Diane, and Barb seized the opportunity to strike back. Diane's face filled with despair. She struggled until she could no longer move. Barb opened the box in her arms, and in her final moments, fulfilled her husband's last wish. In a daze, Barb saw the photo of herself and her husband taken by the Francine Lake. That photo was picked up by Leah. It had been taken on the day Barb and her husband first came to the lake together. Lake Hilda, 1982, their very first date. In this Francine sanctuary filled with tender memories, Barb completed her husband's final wish. Her ashes would remain in Lake Hilda alongside his. And the fact that she gave her life to save Leah became the perfect ending to their love story. So when she faced the end together with a cruel captor, Barb felt no sorrow, only release. As she sank into the lake she missed most, along with the green metal box,